Okay, in this tutorial I would like to demo two of my favorite filters of Nik Software's Color Efex Pro plugin. I'd like to start off with the graduated neutral density filter. As landscape photographers will know, the graduated neutral density filter is a way to selectively darken the horizon of an image in order to make the sky better match the foreground in terms of exposure. However, as anyone who has ever tried a real graduated neutral density filter will tell you, this particular image is a situation where such a filter wouldn't have worked at all, because it needs a more or less linear horizon without major protrusions like this one sticking out of the sky. The same goes, by the way, for the graduated neutral density filter found in Lightroom, so let's start there before we dive into Color Efex Pro. As a general rule of thumb in Lightroom 4, you should now always correct the exposure first and set your exposure where you want your midtones to be. So if I do that, you will notice that the sky and the mountain range become a little bit washed out. Now I can try a Lightroom graduated neutral density filter, but you can already guess what will happen. It will do just the same as a real graduated neutral density filter would do, which is to darken everything. And this is where a plugin like Color Efex Pro comes in handy. So we'll go to Color Efex Pro 4 from our Edit In menu, which will render out the TIFF from what we've done so far and open that TIFF into Color Efex Pro 4. Color Efex Pro 4 always uses the last used filter by default, which is the dark contrast filter. And in this case I even kind of dig what it's doing, but since this is not about dark contrast but about graduated neutral density, let's pick that one. And let me quickly guide you through the settings of the filter, and in order to give you a better idea, I will drag the upper tonality slider all the way down, which is of course something I wouldn't do in a real life situation. But now you have a better feel of the other controls. The upper tonality, as you can see, controls the effect at the top of the filter, how much darkening or brightening you will put in there. The lower tonality will generally be set at 0 because this is the tonality or the exposure difference at the bottom of the filter. The blend is how harsh or soft your filter will blend from the upper tonality towards the lower tonality, and as such normally you will use a blend with at least some positive value. Blend at 0 can only be used in case of very sharp transitions between foreground and background. Then the vertical shift is how far from the top down the filter effect reaches, and the rotation is of course the angle at which you can put the filter. So let me put my filter somewhere in these lines, and I will now drag the upper tonality back up to a more suitable level. Probably something like this here. Now this is before the graduated filter, this is after. Now if you tell me this looks exactly the same as the graduated filter from Lightroom, that's true, but we're not done yet. What we'll do now is we will use some of Nik's patented control points to touch up the graduated filter locally. We will preserve some parts of the image from being influenced by the effect of the graduated filter. So you could say in a way that we will make our own custom cutout graduated filter. Now control points aren't unique to Color Efex Pro 4. Each and every one of the Nik plugins uses them, and it's what makes these plugins stand out in my opinion. However, Color Efex Pro has two sorts of control points, plus and minus. Control points have an area of influence, as I'll show you in a minute. A plus control point will only leave the effects of the filter you applied, in this case the graduated neutral density filter, within its area of influence, whereas a minus control point will leave the effects intact everywhere except in its area of influence. That's the major difference. So they kind of lead you to the same result, but sometimes one will work faster than the other. So depending on the image at hand, you will choose one or the other. Now in this case, I want to remove the effect from these protrusions over here, and from the monks' heads, their hair, and maybe the top part of their robes. So I will use a set of minus control points, and the only thing I have to do is click on a pixel that is representative in terms of color and brightness and contrast for the area I want to preserve. So I have a range of pixels here going all the way from the top to the bottom of this protrusion, but if I have a choice, I will always put it in the center for reasons that will soon become clear. Now I just click on this area, and then the only thing I have to do is drag out the radius slider so that the circle that I see encompasses, and not more than that, but just encompasses the object I want to protect. So something along the lines of this in this example. That's also the reason that I put the reference pixel in the middle and not over here or over here, because doing so allows me to draw the smallest possible circle that still encompasses everything I want to protect. Now, what the software has automatically done is that it has looked for pixels that have a matching texture, color, brightness, contrast, and so on, according to a patented algorithm, and it has made a mask that protects the areas it has selected from the effect of, in this case, the graduated neutral density filter. What it has actually done is, within its area of influence, it has set the opacity of the filter at 0, and you can tell this by the opacity slider, which is all the way down at 0. Now, in some cases 0 will be just perfect, but in other cases you might want to let some of the effect show through in order to have a more photographically realistic effect. And in this case I will settle for something along the lines of 25%. This gives me a better visual match between the touched and the untouched parts of the image. Now, having put this first control point into place, it's very easy to duplicate this and put it on the other areas that need protection. And to duplicate the control point, you just hold down the Alt or the Option key and you click and you drag it towards a new destination. So I need another one over here, and the only thing I have to do is to adjust my radius slider. I need another one over here, and then I need one in the hair, and for the hair I will actually set the opacity to 0 because I really don't want to lose any detail in the hair. Another one in the hair over here, and you can see some detail showing back, and it doesn't have an effect in this area because the reference pixel is set on an almost black value. And again, control point on the faces of the monks, and another control point, maybe a little bit a larger one, on the top of the robes that was also darkened a little bit. Now, that's all there is to it. You see, with a couple of clicks and a couple of control points, in this case 9 in total, and it takes about a minute or so, I have kind of made a custom graduated neutral density filter. Now, for example, if I'm offended by this over darkened part over here, which is probably the result of a polarizing filter, I can very easily put the opacity of the graduated filter somewhere over here to make it less telltale. Now, so this is before the graduated neutral density filter. This is after the custom cutout graduated neutral density filter, thanks to the control points, the minus control points in ColorEfex Pro 4. Now, another new addition to ColorEfex Pro 4 is the fact that you can stack filters on top of each other. And to do so, you just hit the Add Filter button over here, and I can choose another one. And let's have a look at my favorites. Oh, the detail extractor, that might be interesting, and I do want to extract some detail from the foreground. I think the courtyard area is lacking a little bit in texture, in granularity, in atmosphere. So let's look what the detail extractor can do for us. And by hovering over this here, this will allow me, if I click on it, to bring up a set of presets, and I will overdo it just for argument's sake, and I will click on the Extreme Details preset, and watch what happens. You see that this really brings out extreme details in the foreground, and if I turn it off and back on again, so you see I actually like the effect on the courtyard area itself, but I am with you if you think that it overdoes the effect everywhere else. I'm totally with you. So what I'm looking for is a way to apply this effect locally only on the courtyard area and nowhere else. Now, if this were Photoshop, for example, I would probably put this effect on a separate layer in Photoshop and then use all my layer masking skills to build a layer mask, probably with a Wacom tablet or something like that, and brush the effect in locally. Now, however, with what we've learned already, you might think, well, no, we can also put negative control points on all the areas we want to protect, and that would be probably a faster way, but there's an even faster way, and it is by means of using positive control points, because in this case the area that I want to keep the effect on is quite similar in terms of texture, in terms of overall brightness, contrast, saturation, color especially. So I will just use a plus control point and put it on a reference pixel as always, and drag out the radius slider. And this doesn't have to be perfect either, because towards the edges of the radius the effect kind of falls off, so it's not a telltale everything that's within the radius is selected, everything without is unselected. It kind of falls off towards the edges. So more often than not I will make my radius slightly smaller than the area I want to affect. But you see, the filter has done a marvelous job of keeping the filters, or keeping the detail extractor effect only to the pixels I selected, and it has done so much more faster and probably much more photographically correct than I could do hand painting a mask. So there you have it, a short explanation of two of my favorite ColorFX Pro filters. I hope you liked this demo. I hope you liked and I hope you see the potential there is in using plus and minus control points and in stacking filters on top of each other, and I hope to see you again in another video. By the way, if you're interested in purchasing Nik software, you might want to take advantage of these discount codes. I have two for you. If you're living in the USA or in a country that the Nik USA webshop caters to, well then, if you go to the Nik USA website, www.niksoftware.com, and you choose the USA from the country list, then coupon code MoreThanWords15 will entitle you to a 15% discount. Now, if you're a European or within the EMEA area, then the following discount code, which I won't even try to pronounce, but you can see it on the screen, entitles you to a 10% discount. Now, important, as a European, to take advantage of that discount, you have to use the European URL, which is www.niksoftware.com/coupon. So that's not necessary for the Nik USA web shop, but it is necessary for the European web shop. So again, two codes to let you take advantage of a 15 or a 10% discount of the Nik individual plugins, the collections, and the upgrades. Have fun, enjoy, and see you in a later video. Bye bye.